Hello everyone, I'm back with round 5 of the 2018 Chess Olympiad. There are so many exciting games this round. There's the clash between Aronian and Mamidyarov, MVL is playing against Duda, we also have Dingley Ren against David Navarra, but in this video I'm covering the game between Caruana and Boris Gelfand. So Gelfand was the former challenger to the world title against Vichy Anand in the 2012 World Championship match. So this is going to be an exciting one. Without further ado, let's jump into the game. So Caruana had the white pieces and Gelfand had black. The game opens with e4, we have c5, knight to f3, knight c6, and here bishop b5. Caruana goes for the Rossolimo variation. We have g6, bishop takes c6, and here d takes c6. Black captures away from the center, but this does open up the bishop so black can develop it. d3, bishop g7, h3 preventing bishop to g4, knight to f6, knight c3, both sides castle. And here we have knight to e8 from Gelfand. This frees up the f pawn for black, and also the knight has ideas of going to c7. Bishop e3 targeting this pawn. Black defends it, b6, e5 from white in this position. This move gains more space for white, and also now the e4 square is available for white's knight. Black plays f6, challenging this pawn. Rook to e1, knight to c7, queen to d2, preparing to trade the dark square bishops. And here a move like knight to e6 seems quite natural, with the idea of simply going to d4. But Gelfand plays f takes e5, doubling his pawns. And his idea is to open up the f file, and you shall see why in a bit. Bishop to h6. We have rook takes f3 now from Gelfand, so he decides to give up the exchange. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, g takes f3, bishop takes h3, rook takes e5, and here e6. So Gelfand is simply going to cement this bishop here on f5. And when that happens, it doesn't seem easy for white to break through. But Caruana plays very well. First he plays rook to g5. So he simply wants to bring this rook to g3, and this would guard the f3 pawn. Queen to f6, rook g3, bishop f5, and now king to g2, so this rook is threatening to swing over to the h file. And then there are threats of queen to h6. Therefore, h5 from Gelfand, rook to h1, so now rook takes h5 as a threat. That is defended with rook to h8. And now Caruana plays knight to e4, getting another piece closer to the black king. Black could play bishop takes, but after pawn takes, then this file is now open for the queen. So not looking easy for black in this position. Gelfand plays queen takes b2, simply grabbing the pawn. But now Caruana plays queen to f4. And after knight d5, the queen enters the position. This pawn is hanging and white is threatening to play queen to d7. Here black should play h4, trying to keep things very sharp. If queen to d7, then simply go back to g8. And then this is going to be a perpetual. So here if white tries rook to g5, then you simply take the knight, and then queen to f6, hitting this rook. After rook g4, then you play rook to f8. And this knight is hanging, but black has a very serious threat of taking on f3. And this is a highly unclear position. So h4 was probably black's best try. But instead of this, e5 from Gelfand, trying to defend d7 with the bishop. But because this pawn is here on e5, now this queen can never come back to help with the defense of the black king. And also in this position, black is almost in zugzwang. This knight can't really move, because then you allow queen to e7. This rook has to stay on the h file, otherwise rook takes h5. And this bishop always has to keep watch of g6. The only piece that can move for black here is the queen, only to the d4 square. Therefore, he'll rook to h4 from Caruana. So this creates a square for his king in case of knight to f4. And Caruana is simply saying to black, well, what are you going to do in this position? Queen to d4 from Gelfand. The queen always has to keep watch of e5, otherwise queen takes e5. Here king to g1, stepping out of any knight to f4 checks. And well, black doesn't really have a good move in this position. If queen to a1, simply go king to h2. Then this pawn is going to fall, and then this knight would be vulnerable. Here Gelfand plays rook to f8. So now this is on pre, rook takes h5, bishop takes e4, and here Caruana has calculated that queen to d7 would win. Black cannot block with rook to f7 because after rook f7, simply rook to h7, and this is going to be checkmate soon. So here, after queen d7, we have king to f6. So now Caruana takes on c6, give a check again. And then now he takes the bishop. And this is simply a winning position for white. He is up material, and black's king is just so exposed. Here the immediate threat for white, for example, if black plays a5, then queen d6, king f7, give a check, and then this is checkmate. And here if you capture the rook, this is also force mate as well. King to e8, then queen c8 is mate. So here Gelfand plays knight to f4. But a very nice move from Caruana, rook to f5. So this is the only move. And now queen takes f5, king to e7, rook to g7 from Caruana, and it was in this position that Boris Gelfand resigned the game. Well, because he is simply going to get mated. After king to e8, check on c8, the queen can block, but here queen to c6 check. And black has to give up the queen, and this is checkmate. Wonderful game from Caruana, so he has won 2 games in a row against very strong opponents. So he's definitely on fire here. So I'm going to try to cover another game from this round, maybe the game of Aronian versus Mamedyarov. So that is all for this video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.